Good morning for the first time ever on the It's a Football Thing podcast. This is the reaction to Arsenal versus Chelsea. Can already see a few people in the live chat. Welcome. We are going to be looking back at the game that was at 1:30 a.m. our time, but a little bit of a more friendly time for our two special guests. Two men that don't really need an introduction, but we'll give them one anyway. Unfortunately for poor Robbie, he's at work this morning, so I know he would have loved to have been here, but got to pay those bills. We are joined by my co-host, RJ. RJ, welcome.
Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I had to get that in, but no, it's a pleasure. It's 6:30, 7 o'clock, like you said, Scott, and just come off another Balanced Blues Brother podcast with the People's Champ, Joe Tweedy, and the team, and happy to talk Chelsea Arsenal and get the live chat for a lively discussion.
Yeah, I'll be happy to talk about it this morning. Another man who will be equally happy to talk about it is friend and supporter of the show, Patrick. Patrick, how are you, my man?
I'm good, Scott. Sorry for you guys, but happy to be here with another 3 points for Chelsea. And I know RJ will feel the same. And looking forward to talking about the game.
Now, I feel awful for my man, Albert, because Albert's had me on his show many times. He's a good friend and a good supporter. And his YouTube channel is in the bio. So check it out. Subscribe over there. Albert puts out just content that's real. Like real content. It's not jazzed up. He's not putting on the fake rage. Albert tells it how it is. And Patrick's socials are in there too. So make sure you follow him. Albert, how you going, my man?
I'm good. You know what? It's about time I finally graced this podcast. It's been a while. I say to people with YouTube, and it takes time. There's a lot of factors as to why collabs don't happen probably, but I was always going to come on here. So I'm irrespective of the result, and as much as it's annoying as it is, it's nice to come on to another channel and not be the host.
I would have liked to have brought you on under better circumstances too, but you know what? We've got a good chat here, a good live chat, a good group of listeners. So I'm sure you're in very good hands.
Cheers, mate.
If you haven't already, please subscribe. Please share this with your friends. Hit that notification bell and give it a like. It's not easy to come on after an Arsenal defeat to Chelsea. But we might start quickly with the lineups, and I will chuck them up on the screen in a moment. But RJ, Pat, either of you, were you shocked with the Chelsea lineup? Were you happy with it? I personally was shocked to see Lukaku start. I thought he'd come off the bench. But maybe starting with you, RJ, what were your thoughts on the Chelsea lineup?
Yeah, that's a good question, Scott. And while you sort out the visuals, I've shared with you on some of the previews before the game that my personal preference was to have him, Big Rom, injected from the bench and let him ease his way into the match. But equally, we said, given how fit and fresh he looked, if he was to be sprung into action from the get-go, it would be interesting to see how the Arsenal defence, knowing the struggles that they had against Brentford the week before, how they would cope with someone that's in their peak form despite not being in the Premier League for so long. I would say he was the main one because the other players pretty much picked themselves, although I felt young Chalobah in defence was a little bit unlucky given he'd been in great form. But I think it's just a testament to how good of a squad Chelsea is starting to build. So what about yourself, Pat?
I'd have to agree with you about Lukaku, but I can see why he started because of the fact that he did have a full preseason with Inter, and the fact that he had that full preseason. And I think he even said, RJ, in the interview that he had, the first interview he had with Chelsea, that he had that full preseason. He felt fit. He knows a lot of the guys from his time at Chelsea previously with some of the young guys like Mount and Reece, but also he knows some of the other guys from playing against them at his other stops. So I think it was a good, I was pleased to see him start. So it was a pleasant surprise. And then seeing that Alonso kept his place, big shout out to Ken Berryhill, by the way.
Yes.
And then also I was hoping to see N'Golo Kante start, but I can understand because he was just coming off of an injury. That's a kind of person that you want to make sure is completely fit. And it's a real luxury to have a guy like that coming off the bench, right? So a little surprised to see Lukaku starting from the beginning, but very pleased, and especially with how the game turned out.
Albert, I'm going to bring up our lineup in just a tick, but what a luxury to have a player like N'Golo Kante sitting on your bench. Would be an absolutely lovely problem to have. But just as I chuck up the visual, Albert, what were your thoughts on the lineup? Is it what you expected, or would you have liked it to be a little bit different?
The Arsenal lineup. You know what? I've got to the point with Arsenal's lineups, formation systems where I'm not really sure anymore. and to be honest, that stems from the manager. We don't. If you look at Arsenal sort of lineups, particularly defensively, we never have a set centre back pairing. We never ever seem to have a set right back for some reason. Even though we've got 4 right backs at the club, you must know who you want to play as your first team right back. I don't understand. He's been in the job long enough. I don't really get it. Obviously, we heard about Ben White wasn't going to play. I heard the rumor sort of quite early before the game that he might not play. But one thing I would have wanted Arteta to do, which he didn't do, is to revert to a back three and match up Chelsea. That was, I don't need to be a football coach to know that. That was bleeding obvious. And he didn't do that. And as a result of that, what we saw, we played into Chelsea's hands. And I wasn't surprised to see Lukaku starting either. I thought he would start, and he did start.
Yeah, look, for me, when I looked at it, I was asked earlier in the week, I did a couple of previews for this match on some other channels. And I was kind of asked, what's your predicted lineup? And as an Arsenal fan, that's the one question. It's kind of like asking, what are the numbers for the lottery? You can't call it. I really would have liked us to play 3 at the back in this game. But I guess when you think about it, did we have 3 that we could play at the back? Now, I probably would have shifted Tierney into the back 3, given Tavares a start on the left. And I personally would have liked to see Ainsley Maitland-Niles on the right, because I think he, regardless of where he's at in his career, and he doesn't want to play right back, I still think he's probably the best right back we have.
And that's a sad indictment, because he's not a fullback. We have we have natural right backs that can play that position. So I didn't have an issue Cedric starting today, because obviously they said Bellerin was injured, but I my thoughts. I don't really want Bellerin anywhere near the team, if I'm being honest. He shouldn't even be here. But that's another conversation for another day. But we just for Arteta to go into that game. Yes, we've got a very good home record against Chelsea. I understand that. But we're playing against a team that are better than us anyway. And on top of that, they've strengthened. Why are you not matching them? Why you need to match them up same like for like in terms of formation? Because as you saw when the game started, Reece James was always a spare man. Always a spare man. And, Arteta, for me, the players need to take ownership on the pitch, but also the manager's got to spot that within the first 15, 20 minutes. If he doesn't, then you have a huge problem.
Yeah, I felt we were very slow to react. Pat, I want to jump over to you. Let's kind of just share some general thoughts on the match itself. And thank you to the people in the live chat and watching at the moment. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and check out Pat and Albert's socials and Albert's YouTube channel below. But Patrick, when I was watching Chelsea play, you always seem to have space. What were your kind of general thoughts on the way you played this morning? We'll talk about Lukaku after this. But what were your general thoughts on the way you played and set up? Because you look like you had so much space. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I know we're talking about Lukaku later, but I think having Lukaku as a focal point actually created some of that space. So when he was that focal point, he was drawing 2 and 3 defenders like Pablo Mari, was following him all across the back line. And so at times he was getting in Rob Holding's way, and that opened up space on the right channel for Reece, and Reece James just had a field day. And I also think it also had something to do with what I would call intelligent pressing, that everyone was pressing at the same time, which is something we've learned to do under Thomas Tuchel. And I definitely think that Arsenal started doing that at the very beginning of the game, but it was like really high press for about 10 minutes, and then everyone got tired, and then it was like only a few people were doing it. So the way we kind of resisted that pressure for the first 10 minutes or so, and then, like I said, we would pick and choose our times to press, and I think when we did, we would get you guys on the counter, and we create some of that space, and we kept our wing backs wide, and we created that space in order to create a whole lot of chances.
Yeah, RJ, what about you, mate? Obviously, I know you were watching it at the fresh time of 1:30, but I'm sure that would have kept you awake. I struggled, on the other hand. What did you make of the way Chelsea played?
Yeah, what I think, echoing similar sentiments to Pat, but I think an overlay to that is that by having someone like Big Rom come in, it changes the dynamic of the way in which we attack. Because
seems to have cut out just there, but that's all right. I kind of don't. I don't mind if one of the Chelsea contingent freezes. Not you, Pat. If I had to pick someone to freeze, it would be him.
Excellent.
Well, oh no, he's back. Here he is.
I'm back. No, I was just reflecting on the highlights of the game. I had to quickly go watch them again. Now, just quickly though, what I was just going to say is that what we've traditionally failed in the last couple of seasons is we've tended to rely on the fluidity of the movement of the front three, given we haven't had that focal point Pat mentioned. But I think a couple of things that helped give us that extra bit of space was the actual middleman of Kovacic and Jorginho actually worked quite well in terms of being able to interconnect with both of our wing backs. And I actually really was intrigued with the battle between Tierney and Reece James, given that they're both attacking minded at heart, but it was just always going to be about which team would be able to create enough possession and be able to utilize that attacking-minded defender. So for us, as it turned out, we were the team that were on the front foot more often than not. Yeah, well, this is a good comment here. Do you know what's the difference on Chelsea's quality of the players? Yeah, that's true to an extent, but not so long ago, Chelsea's players were being criticised based on not on their quality, but on the actual delivery. And I do think that Arsenal at times, they do have quality players, but they just fail to deliver it consistently. But I'm not going to sit here and saying that we're not a superior team on paper, but we've seen many times, and even United, they had a 1-1 draw, I believe. It's not about always the quality of the players. It's about the quality of the team and how they work collectively and how the manager sets them up from the get-go. So, look, Arsenal did a reasonable job to stem the flow, although that's partially attributed to Chelsea failing and from my perspective to fully capitalise on some of those good chances. But I felt in the second half, Arsenal did try to step up their game, knowing that they were 2 goals behind, and that in that as a result created more space for us to attack. And that's probably the one criticism I had. And Thomas Tuchel alluded to that in his post-match comments, that it was a good performance. We looked a little bit sluggish in terms of our finishing, but on the whole of it, we were definitely the deserved winners, I have to say.
Albert, give me something positive, brother. Now, was there anything you saw in that game on the verge of, like Football Style said, our next game? We're 19th on the table. Our next game's Manchester City. Give me something positive, man. Have you got anything you saw today, even a tiny bit, that gives you a little bit of positivity or hope? Maybe not just for Manchester City, but looking more broadly at our squad, our manager, our club.
God, that's a good question. It could take me a few days to answer that alone tonight. But I've said this before, and I'm gonna repeat it again. People said to me, sort of, what's your feelings about the season for Arsenal? And I just said, look, I'm not looking forward to it because Scott, you've heard me say this before. It's what. Listen, I'm of African origin. We know about being positive. Trust me, but I can't sit here and come on podcasts and do my own channel and lie to people and be positive for the sake of being positive. I always say to people, listen, you can talk about tactics and formations till the cows come home. sit down with your own set of eyes and watch what your team are showing you and what they're performing. And it's not positive. In terms of positive, Scott, what I would say is, you know, the likes of a Ben White coming to Arsenal, the likes of a Lukaku, you know, seeing Saka develop his game more. Those are positives. But the issue with that is those are just individual components. When you're talking about the team ethics and the team actual as a whole working together in relation to how Arteta sets his team up, then it's not going to be positive. So it's a bit difficult to be positive about a situation where a club from top to bottom for quite a number of years under different managers is just rotten to the core. It's very difficult to tell people to be positive because, like I said, when I looked at the start, before the start of the season, Scott, is that I won't judge it on the preseason games. I would judge it on the first 2 months of the season. And the way things are going, I said Arsenal would get 10 points out of a possible 18. I'm looking at it now. I don't know where those 10 points are going to come from.
It's tricky, mate. And look, I'm going to try and find some kind of positive in this game. Now, you know me as well, Albert. This is why we get on so well. I feel like sometimes in our fan base out there in social media, it's a little bit of a competition to see who can be the most positive fan. But unfortunately, I've been watching football a long time, as have you guys in here. Sometimes you got to call it how it is. And until you call it how it is and you look at things with a realistic lens, you don't get improvement. Now, for me, the positives were we looked better in the second half. I'm not saying we looked great. I'm saying we looked better. Lukaku, I put out a tweet during the game. I said, Lukaku to me is not, and I said this to you the other night as well, RJ. Lukaku, from what I've seen, and I know it's only early, but he doesn't look like a player for the future. He looks like a player for now. So I'm really happy with what I saw from him. I thought Emile Smith-Rowe, my man who I'm wrapping up there, I thought he provided a lot of energy. But as a creative player, and let's be real, he's not a goal scorer. As a creative player, you're only as effective as the people in front of you. So there are a couple of positives for me, but I want to point out a few comments in the live chat before I go back to you guys, Pat and RJ. Here we go. Calvin, and welcome, Calvin. Good to have you on. Says, we gave Lukaku too much respect. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but triple teaming these great players is awful. Let him have more ball. Look, interesting take. Do you think, Pat, just quickly, that Arsenal gave Lukaku too much respect? The thought of him having more ball kind of scares me a little bit, to be honest. What do you think, Pat? Did we give him too much respect?
I don't know if it's a matter of giving him too much respect, but I think, you know, double teaming him would be okay because then you have an extra man to cover the flanks. But I mean, the problem was that, like I said earlier, it was like 2 and 3 people coming over, and the defense for Arsenal just didn't look organized at times. And like, you know, when they were caught on the break, it was just kind of, it was very discombobulated, for a lack of a better term. And I think when that happens and you're caught on the break and the effective way in which Chelsea was able to move the ball quickly, it just kind of exposed that space. And that's kind of what created those chances.
Yeah, fair call. There's a couple more in here. Arsenal played better than last week against a more difficult team. Yeah, look, I feel we created a few more chances against Brentford. But overall, the second half was more promising. Couple more comments on Lukaku. We should have focused more on cutting out the balls to him. Yeah, look, there's good thinking in that. Cut off the service and you can quiet down the player. But, you know, it's interesting. Boys, let's go over to you. And this is a good comment from Anthony, maybe for you to start with, RJ. With Lukaku in that starting striker role, is Timo Werner worth the money as a backup striker, or should he be playing on the wing? What are your thoughts on that and Werner and anything in general?
Yeah, no, great shout out to Anthony. He's always a supporter and family of mine. But for me, Timo, it was nice to see him get a couple of minutes to come on at the end just to familiarise himself with Big Rom. For me, yeah, look, it's a lot of money as a backup, but the reality is we have paid for him now, so it's not like we're buying him to come in as a backup. And we have to appreciate at the moment we're playing with the front three up the top as they are. But I think what we will start to see, and we saw it in a few instances today, whoever effectively plays in those top positions with him, Rom will be able to integrate them with him as almost like a quasi second striker. So actually, while a lot of commentaries about how bringing Lukaku interferes with his game time, it might do so, but it actually might maximize his effectiveness when he's on the pitch. So last season's demons of his poor finishing and his lack of ability to dribble past defenders and really have that fine touch, I don't think that's going to plague him this season, because effectively, as long as Chelsea can continue to get the service to Lukaku and he's the one pulling defenders apart, by virtue of that fact, it creates more space for Timo to utilise his strengths of running in onto the ball and into space rather than having to play his back towards goal, because that's not his strong suit. So yes, expensive second backer. I wouldn't play him on the wing, and it'd be more of an inverted left forward. So I think this is actually going to be some kind of enabler for players like Timo, like Kai Havertz, like Ziyech and Mount. So it's one thing and that's the tweet I put out earlier. It's one thing for Lukaku to improve our goal conversion. It's another thing altogether for him to be a whole team enabler. So exciting times if you're a Chelsea fan.
Absolutely. Pat, before we start dissecting Arsenal's left-hand side, Albert and I, that'll be a fun job for us. Just want to shout out a couple of people in the live chat. We've got Holly here.
Good evening.
Fan sneaking in.
Holly, get out of the chat, Holly.
Good on you, Holly.
Good job, Holly.
I love her.
Holly, feel free to stay. I'm happy to have you, even though you're a Spurs fan. Just hit that sub button, okay? If you haven't checked out Holly's Spurs content, make sure you find her. She puts out some awesome stuff. Yeah. As well, we've got Keith in here, another top gooner, good supporter and friend. I know he just put out a match reaction video that I'll be watching straight after this. Yeah. The Blue Lounge are joining us. RJ and I were on there the other day. Mate, I might be busy if you need me for a reaction. So
book him in, Mo.
And there are some other comments that I'll chuck up as well from Calvin. He's put some really good contributions. But Pat, before we talk about the left-hand side of Arsenal, what excites you about the way that Chelsea are playing at the moment?
I think just the togetherness of the team, the chemistry that we're building. I mean, to play as well as we did today with this being Lukaku's first game, I think that that's something I'm really excited about. And the fact that we still didn't have an N'Golo Kante playing, and for Jorginho and Kovacic to play as well as they did today. Because Kovacic sometimes, he is such a good dribbler and he's so good with the ball in tight spaces. But sometimes, either that final pass or that, that shot sometimes just won't go anywhere. But, that pass over the top today that he played for the first goal was just absolutely sensational. So I want to give credit where credit's due. And I just think I think what we have in midfield is good. I'd love to add to it, but I think that what we have is good. I love the fact that we have so much depth up top. I think that Lukaku is going to be able to bring the best out of the attackers that we have, like RJ said. And a good point by Holly about Timo Werner not being offside today. And well, I mean, but to have guys in the team like we do that can play off of Lukaku, I'm just really, really excited about what's to come. And it's going to be a real big test next week against Liverpool. And we'll really see what we have going into that game. But I'm really excited about just the depth that we have on the bench, the guys that we can plug other guys in. And I think that we'll go from strength to strength. And like RJ said earlier, it's just a great time to be a Chelsea supporter.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, Albert, let's give Holly what she wants. And some of the Chelsea fans, let's reflect on what went wrong for us. To me, I saw a lot of debate on, Arsenal Twitter, and that's nothing new to anyone, but a lot of debate and people kind of giving Tierney the brunt of the blame. Now, I kind of want to put out there, Tierney has not had a good start to the season. Yeah, he had a really poor performance against Brentford. I don't think he performed well today. But I kind of think he's got enough goodwill in the bank that he can get away with a couple of below par performances. I still think he had a great work rate, but I feel like the way we'd set up, he was too exposed. To me, something didn't look right with Bukayo Saka today. I don't know if maybe he's not fit or not sharp, but what did you make of the left-hand side and our defending?
You know what? Actually, it's funny when you talk about the Brentford game. I actually thought him and Emil Smith-Rowe were the only two players that came out of any credit in the first game, particularly Tierney in the second half against Brentford. But today, like I said earlier in the stream, the fact we didn't match Chelsea up in terms of playing three at the back was a huge issue, even with Ben White not playing. You can still play that system. At the end of the day, what have you been doing in training? If you train for different eventualities, it can happen. So you're right. You're now, Scott, you're spot on with Tierney. I think he's one of the few Arsenal players you can sort of turn around and say, you know what, he's had a mare or he's had a bad game, but you know what, we can forgive him because we know, the grittiness and the determination he normally gives in terms of an Arsenal performance. So for the first goal, and the two Chelsea guys mentioned it earlier, the thing is, when you press, it's not just the sake of pressing for the sake of pressing. You need to press in twos and threes. But the problem was, we tried to do it to Lukaku, when, to be honest with you, the supply line was to be pressing high against the likes of Kovacic and Jorginho, because they are very good in terms of the quality on the ball. Because with the first goal, you saw about 4 or 5 Arsenal players around Lukaku, which Tierney's come over way too. I think it's the second goal, sorry, but he overcompensated Tierney. That's fine when you do that, when you want to cover your centre back, but when you're leaving space by that much of a margin, it's going to be a huge problem. But again, like I said, the manager has to see that. I've said so many times with Arsenal, because we don't have good fullbacks on both sides of the pitch, we're very predictable when we come forward from wide areas. Because if it isn't Tierney, then who is it? And even when he does get to the final third, Kieran Tierney, who are you putting the ball in the box to? Lacazette doesn't like to get in the box enough. He doesn't. For a striker, I find that crazy. And Aubameyang doesn't play centrally. So where's the point of attack going to come from? And with Saka, it's you can see it's a fitness thing. Hence the reason why he got 60 minutes today. But yeah, people talk about the creativity at Arsenal, for example, but that comes with recruitment. Part of it, it's not the only thing, but that comes with recruitment. And we had a chance to rectify a lot of wrongs in this team, Scott, in the summer, with the purchases we made. But the problem is, if you look at Arsenal signings, Chelsea make a signing in Lukaku, he's ready-made. We're bringing in Ben White, who's literally, let's be honest, he's going to be the only starter consistently with the players we bought.
Yeah,
and for me, I agree. That's crazy that the likes of the younger players that we have at Arsenal, they should be blooded into the team. They shouldn't be, not that they haven't got talent, but they shouldn't be at the forefront of trying to spearhead this struggling side. It's crackers to me. I don't understand that.
To me, a big issue, Albert, is that if Pat or RJ were to say to me, Scott, we've never watched Arsenal play before.
Yeah.
Can you explain how they play? I couldn't say too much. I could tell them that we'll have some of the ball. We'll pass it up. We'll get near their box. And then we'll do one of two things. We'll either freeze and start passing backwards to do it all over again.
Yeah, recycle.
Or we'll put in a wayward cross when we don't have someone in there who's equipped to deal with crosses. Now, if we were to sign a Dominic Calvert-Lewin,
different story.
I don't think it's going to happen, but hey, we can dream, right? If we were to sign someone like that, I could see that the crossing is an effective and clear game strategy. But we just seem lost in attack. And I feel like Pepe this morning was slowing us down. Like when we got up there, he was kind of doing the stutters and the trick, but he wasn't penetrating that Chelsea line. So I felt we were just really flat, and we're 2 goals in. Sorry, I wish we were 2 goals in. We're 2 games into the season, no goals. So the attack needs to be fixed. We'll go back to the Chelsea boys just in a tick. But Albert, what could we do realistically in your eyes when we've got our players back, Laka, Aubameyang? Do you think we persist playing the way we do, or do we need to bring in Dominic Calvert-Lewin to start scoring goals?
The first thing we need to do, Arsenal fans, is we need to pray. That's the first thing we need to do, because there's going to be a lot more bumps in the road, man. You know what it is? You're right in terms of the slowness of play. I mean, even with the pre-season games, right? Even going back to last season, for example, Arsenal 66% possession against Brentford. Chelsea today, after 36 minutes, had 66% possession. But you could see why they've had 66% possession. When I watched the Arsenal Brentford game, if somebody told me that when that was happening, I wouldn't have believed them, because we have a lot of the ball. But if you look at the areas of the pitch we have the possession of the ball, we're not going to penetrate teams. We're not going to hurt them because the transition of play is too slow. If it isn't Bern Leno hold on to the ball too long, the centre-backs are not comfortable on the ball. And that's even before we bought Ben White, by the way. None of them are comfortable. We had one player that did that, but he's left the club. That's David Luiz. He was the only person that was comfortable on the ball. Xhaka's not going to give us the dynamism and the passing range and what we need as a midfield player to progress forward in terms of the midfield and being having a bit more emphasis. Hence the reason why, personally, I was crying out for Yves Bissouma. But Arsenal fans don't want him because he plays for Brighton.
I'd take him.
That's the problem with our Arsenal. That's the problem with sections of our fan base. They find fault in players that would make our team better, but are happy to stick by the guys that are no good in terms of progressing our team forward. It's a really backwards way of thinking, but welcome to the Arsenal fan base. And quickly, sorry, so about the protest. From what I heard, it was non-existent. And I wasn't surprised to hear that one bit, because, you know, everyone thought they'd done their job in this, you know, after the whole European Super League thing. They all turned up for their Everton game at home. Was it 4,500, 5,000 fans were there, done their job. That was it. I went to 2 protests after that. I'd have been better off going to the library, because there was more enthusiasm to buy the Arsenal kit than there was to actually be there for the reason that the social media fan base tried to get together and rack up the, you know, cronky out thing. But the energy's just not there, Scott. Everyone's got their different sections of the fan base have got their different interests into how this club move forward, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and until we unite, I don't think it will. Before I throw over to you, Pat, just if you had any final thoughts on the match itself, just wanted to point out, Lottie was at the game today. She said she was disappointed with the Chelsea fans. They only sung a couple of songs. You'd think you'd be singing all the way through. She said, we definitely weren't in the library. Look, to me, home fans, I thought, did a good job. I thought they did a good job today. It was interesting in the post-match conference. Arteta was asked, I'm not sure who the reporter was, but they said, how did you feel when the fans booed you off at the end of halftime and the end of full time? I heard some slight boos. It didn't seem as kind of toxic as I've heard it before. Maybe Lottie can tell us, but he just kind of wrote it off. He said there were more positives than negatives from the fans. If only we had more positives than negatives on the pitch. Pat, did you have any closing thoughts on the game or any banter you want to chuck at us, my man? This is your chance to do it.
Well, there were 2 players today that I thought Arsenal were missing. That's Carl Jenkinson and Agu Diaby. Sorry, that's just one I always have to throw in. Those are my 2 favorite players to bring up.
You cheeky bugger.
Oh, no, you're very cheeky.
No, honestly, to Lottie's comment, I was hearing from people that were at the ground too that a lot of the, like, at least what we heard on TV, that some of the microphones weren't near the Chelsea support, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Lottie was at the game, so I'm not, but I think we have great traveling support, and shout out to the Chelsea support that went to the match today, because I personally thought they were great because I could hear them. But, everyone, I don't expect an Arsenal supporter to point that out. But, and But anyways, I honestly thought that we deserved the 3 points today. In the second half, I didn't think we really got out of second gear. I think we just we were trying to save our energy and, hopefully just kind of safely see the game out. And it's because, quite frankly, we didn't really need to get out of it. I thought Arsenal was much better in the second half, but I think we were just we knew we had Liverpool next week, so let's try to conserve some of that energy. And honestly, just really pleased with the 3 points.
RJ, closing thoughts, my man. You've just been smiling at me the whole time. My eyes keep drifting over to you because I know when
I just love watching the live chat and we're resorting to we couldn't really hear much of the Chelsea fans singing. I'm thinking, well, we're singing loudest where it matters, unfortunately. And I could hear him. Lukaku stopped a few times to turn around and praise the crowd because he could hear them. So I think there's if that's a consolation for the Gunners, then that's all good as well. But we'll just take our 3 points and 2 Champions Leagues and keep moving. No, in all seriousness, in all seriousness, Arsenal did try to come out in that second half. And to Mo's point earlier, the first 10 minutes, I thought Arsenal had a lot of energy and were really trying to not match it with us, but at least come up with the required energy and enthusiasm with that really loud Emirates crowd. So big up to the Gunners that were there, because I thought they did create a great ambience. But from my perspective, in that second half, while Arsenal stepped up their game, I concur with Pat's comments. That's probably as a result of us trying to deploy some game management, which hasn't been one of our strong suits from the previous season. Yeah. So for us, if we're genuinely going to be serious about pushing for a title, it's in those instances where we're 2-0 up, we're going to either push for a third properly or we're going to need to ride the wave. And I felt that we rode the wave pretty well, although Rob Holding did miss a pretty good, glorious heading opportunity. And Mendy did make a nice save via the deflected shot. But how good was Bert Leno's save on Lukaku's header? Wow, what a save. That's probably something that hasn't gotten spoken about enough, because it could have got really ugly after that point. But at the end of the day, 2-0. And as you know, Scott, it's always nice to beat an old rival. But from my perspective, it's a professional job, and the 3 points is what matters most.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 points in the bag. I'm sure you'd be happy with that. Let's quickly look at the 2 managers. Obviously, Thomas Tuchel has come in and he has turned your club around. It's amazing what a manager change can do. Pat, you'd have to be really pumped to have this guy at your club. What are your thoughts on Thomas Tuchel? Do you see him being a long-term manager for Chelsea? I know that's a bit of a joke, a long-term manager at Chelsea, but are you happy? Do you want to see him stay for a while?
I would. First of all, I love Thomas Tuchel. I would love to see him stay for a while. And honestly, I have to be honest. When he first was appointed, I was not initially a fan of the move, just because, I have a lot of love for Frank Lampard, and I really hope to see him stay. But Thomas Tuchel has proven me wrong, and I have never been prouder to be wrong in my life. I would love to see him stay, but as you kind of referenced with Chelsea, you kind of have to take it by half season, and it can always change. But I would love to see him stay long term. What I love most about Thomas Tuchel are the interviews that he does. When he's in a press conference, he always seems to say the right thing, and every time, and then he backs it up with his selections, and he just manages the media so well. And we have such a big squad that he's had to work with, and how he's managed to keep the players happy and make the right substitutions when he's had to. I think that he's done just a fabulous job, and I'm behind him 1,000%. And I really, really hope that he's here for years to come.
RJ, your thoughts on the man in charge?
As Pat said, I'm a huge Super Frank advocate, but at the end of the day, what his achievements are with the club in his playing days and what he did do in his first season in charge will not go diminished. The club did bring on someone that they, in their view, would carry the club forward. And you've got to say that the board, Marina, etc., full ticks for their due diligence, because the guy's come in and he's one of, if not the best managers in the world in the modern day era. So from my perspective, do I want to see him stay around for a long time? Sure, but I'm also a realist in the sense of I know what my club is like when the roads get a bit rocky. But I do believe genuinely that he's built up enough capital to keep him safe to navigate through those rocky waters, which will never occur, of course, because we're going to win the quad this season undefeated. So put that to the side for a moment. I also enjoy listening to his press conferences. I'm not sure what Arteta's like because he seems to be a bit of a forlorn character these days, and he kind of looks a bit depressing to watch. But Tuchel, even when we're not winning games or whatever, the three things you get from him are transparency, sincerity, and you get a lot of respect from him. So I do appreciate the fact that he tries to genuinely connect with the Chelsea community, win, lose or draw. But yeah, we'll see. The Chelsea is like the saying, chaos is a ladder. For us, every time there's some instability, we seem to perform better. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, look, I'm with Lottie on this one. You're not going undefeated, mate. That's not
happening.
Only if we played Arsenal each week, Lottie, then that would be possible.
But that's not going to happen.
Hey, Holly had a question, RJ. She put in the live chat. Holly's a Spurs fan. So I kind of get what she was doing there. She's being a bit cheeky. So she asked, what are those things behind you if the football's on the test? Now, I wasn't sure if she was talking about myself or you. So in the chat, I said, who are you talking to, the bold one or me?
Or one of these ones, maybe.
She said that the bold one. What are the shiny gold things? Because she hasn't seen one in a while. Do you want to quickly tell the live chat how you earned those trophies? Were you 6, 7, 8?
Great question, Holly. Great comment. And no offense taken. I'm just glad you're referring to the gold things that are shiny and not my head that's probably glaring in the light. But interesting science story. So I put these trophies and I held this medal up for Scott to show him that we were Super Cup winners, but they were collected during my days of futsal and a bit of indoor soccer as well, and a little bit of 11-a-side. So I used to play a bit of goalkeeper, and this particular medal I got here, I'll dangle up again. That was with Rob, our other co-host, and we won that when I was a goalkeeper in this 6-a-side tournament. And in a penalty shootout, I had the nice accolade of saving all 5 penalties that I was up against. So I'm happy to be third choice goalkeeper for any club that takes me.
Spurs might take you if you bring your medals. Hey, we've talked about Thomas Tuchel. Albert, I reckon you and I share pretty similar views on this. There's been a few comments in the live chat around Mikel Arteta. I'm just going to scroll through a couple, then we'll talk to it. Will he still have a job after Man City beat Arsenal next week? Mo's not giving us much of a chance, unfortunately. Calvin's saying that he thinks we're slightly further forward than this time last year. He did want to change after Villarreal, but he felt okay with some of our play today. And there was one more in there about Mikel Arteta somewhere. I apologise that I've missed it.
Yeah, you know what? When you bring that up, Scott, there was one good passage of play that I saw from Arsenal in the second half that stood out to me. It didn't really lead to an opportunity per se, but it was more about the general gameplay. How I think there was 4 or 5 Arsenal players that collectively pressed Jorginho, Alonso, Christensen, and eventually they got themselves out of it because we've been working really hard on our press resistance. Yeah, it is, Robbie. But just in general, I think that's to your point you made earlier, Albert, about that pressing with purpose and also being able to do it in a systematic way and not just having poor Martinelli doing it on his own or poor Smith Rowe or Tierney trying to carry the team on his shoulders. So it was just that segment of play. I thought if they could maintain that 4 or 5 systematic way of pressing, they would have a lot more ability to win that possession in the areas they want and not just get to the byline and recycle it back up like they tend to do. So I just thought I'd highlight that because it was a good part of the game from your point of view.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I think Lottie has kind of summed it up. I think we needed to make change last year, Albert, to me. And it's not personal. You know, I'm not one of those fans that cross into the lines of abusing players or managers. It's not how I conduct myself, but it's never personal for me. I just want what's best for Arsenal. Yeah, so when I looked at Arsenal last season, I felt we underwhelmed. I was disappointed we didn't get to the final of the Europa. And there were just some results in there that left me, what's the word for it? Maybe a bit disheartened about our direction. So I'm not demanding that we win the league this year. I'm not demanding that we're in a title battle. That's not where we're at the moment. I understand that we are a work in progress, but I'm not quite seeing the progress yet. So for me, I think we probably should have pulled the trigger at the end of last season to give a new manager that £129 million to spend and a preseason. But Lottie kind of brings up a good point. Who replaces him? And thanks, Holly, for the sub as well. We appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you on one time when Tottenham and Chelsea play. Not around the North London derby at this point. But who could possibly replace him if he went? Or do you think we need to give him this season regardless of what happens?
My easiest answer to that question is, and I 100% believe this, I don't care what football club you support, everybody's replaceable. Everybody's replaceable. The problem you have at Arsenal is you've seen it from a financial point of view. People talk about Arsenal haven't got money to compete with certain other clubs, which I kind of get a little bit in terms of if you're talking about Chelsea, Man City, probably. But I've kind of lost my train of thought now. I'll come back to it. But no, with Arteta, sorry. I said this before, and I've said it quite a few times, actually. Arsenal are very unique in the sense that normally if a manager's not getting results, it's a results business, they lose their job. That's just the path of the course. But we seem to be in a position where we're keeping the guy on because, and I'm talking about sort of amongst the kind of social media stratosphere, we don't want to be a club that keeps sacking managers. That's not how a business works. If you're not getting results, you can't just keep a guy on because there's nobody out there. There are people out there. It's just whether Arsenal are ready to stump up the cash. I mean, if you can't have enough funds to stump up to get managers, then you really, really are screwed. Because you can talk about outlaying for players as much as you want, but you're telling me Arsenal Football Club cannot afford to get a manager. That's ludicrous. I don't care what anyone tells me of any age generation. That's crazy to me to hear that. With Arteta, I understand the inexperience, Scott. But a lot of these decisions for me that he makes are just through bloody minded stubbornness. That's not experience. He keeps on doing the same things. We're led to believe he has an experienced coaching setup around him. He's obviously not utilizing it because either he's not listening, or they're not, or they're not experienced. Which one is it? But I said it before. Where Arteta lost me as a fan, and you can go through my content. I didn't really get drawn on, an Arteta camp here. Or to me, if you're not getting the results, you shouldn't be keeping your job anyway. But when he came out and said about the Cronkies that if you got to know them better, you'd be surprised. From that, when he turned around and said that, I said, I'm done with this guy. Because you cannot turn around and say that after the whole Super League fiasco. The Arsenal fans have never trusted this guy since he's come to Arsenal. That's going back a number of years. And you come out and turn around and say that to the media and the Arsenal fans. And to be honest with you, mate, I'll be surprised if he makes it to October. I'll be very, very shocked.
Yeah, I just don't know, man. Look, half of me, I can understand that for him to come out, the Kroenke group has given him personally a chance that he was never going to get at another big club. His first managerial job is at, a big club. I don't care if people want to throw the banter out that Arsenal aren't a big club. We are a big club, right? We are a big club. We're not playing big club football at the moment, but we are a big club. Now, they've given him that first managerial chance, so I can kind of get that for him to come out publicly and, chew up his employers is career suicide for him at Arsenal anyway. But at the same time, you lose the fans because we're not stupid. We're not mugs. We know that the Kroenke group has been mismanaging us for years. So, yeah, that's why I was so disappointed these protests is. Any time that a protest is planned and doesn't happen, it empowers the Kroenke group. It empowers them because they know that we won't follow through. So yeah, I was gutted that it didn't happen this morning.
And you know, we've also got the signings kept the Arsenal fans quiet, which I knew would happen. I knew it would happen. It was tailor-made for that to happen.
Yeah. Pat, I know you wanted to make a comment about the Kroenkes, my man.
Yeah, just to Albert's point, I think Albert's absolutely right about the fact that about the money situation. Just from an American perspective, Stan Kroenke has money. I mean that you can't say that the Kroenke family doesn't have money. I mean the man owns the Los Angeles Rams and in American football.
Denver Nuggets.
The Denver Nuggets in the NBA. I mean, so the man has money to spend, and it's not a question of whether he has money. It's a question of whether he wants to make the investments in the right place. I mean, what have you spent? 129 million pounds this summer, somewhere in that range. And it's not a question of whether you had money. It's a question of, did you need an Aaron Ramsdale when you've got a Bernd Leno, or did you need, did you need Ben White at 50 million? I mean, Lukaku has looked like a good signing so far, but it's a question of are you assessing your needs in the right places? And Arsenal wouldn't be the first club where that happens, but I mean it's about really identifying where you need help and trying to go out and spend the money needed to address the needs in those places.
Bang on. Can't argue with that. I don't know if you had any comments on that, RJ. There's something I wanted to share from old mate William at the moment, but I just want to see if you had any thoughts on Kroenke at the moment, RJ.
Yeah, just quickly, for those that don't know, haven't seen previous videos, my thoughts are the fact this business treats Arsenal like a business. They care about the commercial side of things, the balance sheet. If the club was playing in the balance sheet Premier League, they would be doing very well. But it's not that. It's not about that. It's for the Alberts of the world, the Scots, the Lotties. It's the fans that make the fabric of the club. But unfortunately for your ownership, it seems at the moment that fabric isn't a consideration in any of their deliberations, and it's just all about the return on investment. And there's a comment in a live chat from mostly Arsenal about the only way the Kroenkes will pull the trigger is empty seats. And I agree, because then the balance sheet, the money, it's all money talks and the Kroenkes walk. So until that happens, and I don't necessarily blame the likes of Arteta, because he's operating within himself, if you know what I mean. Like, he's at the early stages of his career. He hasn't been there, done that. So he's not going to be able to bring in his experience from yesteryear to say, I've dealt with these kinds of setups and I know how to massage these and get the most out of my squad. I believe he's doing the best he can with what he's got. And that's the thing. It's doing the best with what he's got. And to Pat's point about the sensibility of the investments made, the reality is Arsenal probably are in a position to dictate the terms of what's appropriate pricing for some of their players, because any depth is good depth at the moment for them. And time will tell if the likes of Ben White, Ramsdale turn out to be good signings. But for now, I'm with Albert. I'd be very surprised if Arteta stays beyond October, or if he gets that far.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I just quickly want to share this that was doing the rounds on social media a little bit earlier. I'm taking it at face value. It looks authentic to me. It's come out from a few sources, but, Chelsea put out this tweet liked by the double agent, William.
It's fat finger syndrome, Scott. That's all.
We need to stop doing business with Chelsea Football Club, Albert. Every time we take a player from them, we end up on the wrong end of the deal. I mean, they've taken Ashley Cole from us. They had Cesc Fabregas come back. They don't seem to get stung.
They finally sort of lied.
They don't seem to get stung the way we do. Albert, are you imposing a transfer ban on any future transfers from Chelsea or what?
It's not just Chelsea. It's not just Chelsea. I remember the likes of Mikel Silvestre playing for us. Yossi Benayoun. There's been some terrible players that have graced Arsenal Football Club, and I can't understand. Listen, the thing is, even when the Tammy Abraham links, for example, Chelsea said there's no way in hell we're letting this guy go to Arsenal.
And this is a player they didn't want to keep. They didn't even want him.
Yeah. So, but that's how a club should operate. You do not sell to your rivals.
Exactly.
There's no way. None of the top football clubs, right, would take probably quite a huge chunk of some of the Arsenal players we've got, or who are surplus to requirements. Nobody would take some of our players. They generally would not take them. Arsenal seem to be that club that take people that are in either their final payday or their best years are behind them. How is that possible? And then on top of that, to compound it even further, you're gonna take an inexperienced coach, stroke manager. It's crackers. You kind of touched on what I was gonna say before in terms of, like I said, Scott, I've said this so many times and I'll keep on saying it. At Arsenal, 3 key senior positions at the football club, and they're all inexperienced. In my lifetime of watching football, I've never seen a football club operate like that. You could possibly get away with 1 inexperienced key figure, and even that's not really ideal, but 3. So it was never conducive to have a very good transfer window at Arsenal. It just wasn't. So I'm not shocked of what I've seen, if I'm being totally honest. Hence the reason why I wasn't positive coming into this season.
I can't say that I feel any differently to you, Albert. It's kind of I was on the football terrace a little bit earlier because I decided after the 1:30 kickoff that I didn't want to go to sleep. I had some uni work to do. I thought, well, may as well do it now. But when I was on there, I kind of just said we need to be ruthless.
Yeah,
we need to start being a ruthless club. We are not ruthless enough to be competing with clubs bigger than us, and it shows by how often clubs make a mug out of us in the transfer market. So on that, boys, we have been going for almost an hour. I appreciate your time. I know it's getting late for you, Albert, so don't want to keep it going too much longer. Please, if you haven't already, like the video. There are a lot of new faces in here. I'm sure you've come to see our awesome guests, but please, we'd love you to sub and come back and see some more of us too. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. We are trying to grow this thing from the ground up. But let's look forward now. We've looked backwards. I've already forgotten the Arsenal-Chelsea result. I don't ever want to speak about it again.
I can help you refresh that, Scott, if you forget. That's fine. Happy to recap if you like, mate.
And if RJ isn't available, I'll be happy to help as well.
Brilliant. I'll be sending Albert DM saying, sorry, I invited you into a Chelsea ambush, my man.
Nah, that's all right, man. It's all good, man.
Hey, Albert, as far as Chelsea fans go, these two are all right, yeah?
Yeah, they're not bad, man. I'll give them their due. They're not too bad. They're doing all right.
They're pretty good.
In the UK here, man, we've got some unbearable Chelsea fans. Trust me. So you two all right.
Yeah. Boys, let's look forward. We'll go to the Chelsea guys first. You have a big match against Liverpool. Heaps of people coming out. Like when I was on the football terrace this morning in the live chat, so many people were saying Virgil van Dijk's going to control Lukaku. You won't even know he's playing next week. Very quickly from both of you, and we'll start with you, RJ. How do you see the game going against Liverpool? Do you think Virgil will be able to do what our defenders couldn't this morning? And just quickly, the season as a whole, where do you see Chelsea going?
Yeah, good question. And what a matchup, right? Even if you're not a Chelsea fan, I dare say being a neutral, if you would, picturing it, that the prospect of Lukaku versus VVD is going to be something that's all eyes will be watching. I do agree that he will have a better go at trying to contain the beast that is Romelu Lukaku. But I think what will help his cause is the fact that collectively speaking, Liverpool are going to be in a better position to stem the flow of Chelsea's waves and waves of attack. So I think it's going to be a lot more even, with no disrespect to Arsenal. You can appreciate that there are 2 different positions in time. So it'll be just interesting from my perspective to see just how influential he can be, given the fact that Liverpool are likely going to enjoy a bit more possession and actually put us on the back foot for some spells of the game. So his contribution, unlike today where he was quite active in Arsenal's area and back towards goal around the 18-yard box and linking up with Mount and Havertz, etc., I think his contribution will be equally as influential, but what we'll see is probably a different type of profile of his contribution, meaning we might see him more involved on releasing the likes of Havertz and Werner on a quick counter-attack, given that we're going to be on the back foot, as I mentioned, for spells of the game. And in terms of Chelsea season more broadly, look, I'm optimistic, you know that, Scott, but I'm also quite balanced and I'm a realist at heart. So for me, it's 2 games in. We gotten wins against teams, with all due respect, we should be getting wins against based on how things are flowing at the moment. So until we can demonstrate this consistently for a sustained period of time, I'm going to keep my expectations measured, but so far so good, and let the good times roll. Hey, Pat?
Absolutely, my man. But I'm really in the same boat that you are. It's only 2 games in. I mean, actually, Lampard had a fairly decent start to the campaign last year and, last season, and we saw where that ended up. So, I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say. As far as the game against Liverpool, this is going to be a much different Liverpool side than we saw to last season because, as we all know, Virgil van Dijk got hurt in the very first game of the season last year. And, I mean, I think anyone that watches Liverpool knows just how important he is to that side because they have just bundles of talent going forward. But when they didn't have anyone in that central defense to marshal it and to keep it organized, that was something that caused Liverpool to concede a lot of goals and to concede a lot of chances. So I think Lukaku is going to obviously face a different monster. No disrespect to Arsenal or their back line, but having someone like Virgil van Dijk back there, who honestly is probably one of the best central defenders in the world, best defenders in the world, period. And I think he's looked good the first couple games of the season, but Liverpool still does concede chances. So I think that, as RJ said, Lukaku is going to be playing in more your Timo Werners, your Kai Havertz, or Hakeem Ziyech, or Mason Mount. I think that's going to be the biggest difference, is that his ability to have a better first touch than he had during his first spell at Chelsea, and his ability to link up play like that has improved just so much from his time at Inter, that I think that he's going to have a role to play. It may not necessarily be in goals, but I think that he has a role to play. It's going to be a really tight game next weekend. But like RJ, I'm also not ready to say that. I'm not going to be reactionary and say that Chelsea are just going to walk away with the title. I mean, there's obviously 5 or 6 teams that have a shout at that, because Scott, we were talking about this before we went on. There's no easy games in the Premier League. Let's just see how we do against low blocks. Let's see how we do against teams that figure out the way we play, because there's good teams in this league and good managers that are going to tweak their tactics. So I'm cautiously optimistic and love having a focal point, but we have to take it game by game, because if we look too far ahead, there's going to be one of those outlier results that could come back and hurt us. So I'm going to be happy about what happened today and take it game by game.
Balance, man. And that's honestly, that kind of sums up what our channel's all about. We're about balance. We're about just being real, man, and that was extremely real. Pat, you're going to have the last word on this stream a little bit later on, because there's something that Robbie wants to hear come out of your mouth. But we're not going to get there yet.
Not just Robbie.
I think all the Chelsea people watching. But Albert, let's kind of flip. We've kind of gone from the optimistic side, looking ahead to how they're going to compete against Liverpool and for a title, over to us, where it's probably a little bit more real. We've got City next week. Never an easy match, but definitely not an easy match on the back of 2 defeats. How do you see the City result going, and do you have any kind of long-term thoughts on our season?
I'll answer that in reverse. In terms of in terms of the season, I think if the form carries on from what I saw from the back end of last season, coming into Brentford, putting us away, first game of the season, obviously losing today, I think we'd be lucky to make the top 7. Lucky,
yeah. Very cool.
Because there's teams that you wouldn't class as the big sides, the big teams, shall I say. listen, West Ham hadn't finished above Arsenal for over 35 years until last season, from what I was been told. So anything's possible. So I'm not too optimistic about the league campaign. In regards to the Man City game, the last time we won there was, I think it was 2015. Santi Cazorla was still playing then, pulling strings for us in midfield. It's a long, long time ago. We've taken some hammerings there at City. I don't think, if I look at it really in terms of our last few years we've gone there, we've not been close. It's we've not really been in the games. So why would I be confident? And the worst thing as well, UK time anyway, we don't do well in the midday games up for Arsenal in the Premier League. So that goes against us already. So to be kind, Scott, I think we might get away with a 3-1 defeat.
Okay, what do you make of this comment? I'm not going to answer it. I'm glad she's asked you.
So when we lose, Holly, let me make something clear to you, right? I'll tell you what. We're playing you the end of September, which is just after Holly's birthday. So we'll have that conversation then.
Albert, spoken like a politician, my man. I love that. Look, for me, really quickly, I think City are just in that next tier that we're aspiring to get back into. I think they'll have too much for us. I don't think anyone will call me crazy for predicting that City will get up and win the match. Doesn't help that even though they had a disappointing result against Holly's Spurs, I'm sure they'd be gutted at losing to that team because they probably thought it was 3 points in the bag. But then to bounce back off a 5-0 win, like that's going to send them into our match full of confidence, knowing that we're kind of, I know it's silly to say only a couple of games in, but it's almost like we're getting near the ropes. It's just going to be really difficult bouncing back after potentially 3 consecutive losses. But I do like this comment that this is where our season starts for me. I realistically wasn't expecting points from Chelsea or City. I was hoping for them, but that's where our season starts. So it's going to be an interesting ride, going to be a very interesting one. Thank you guys for coming on. We've been absolutely blessed to have such high quality guests on. RJ, did you have any closing thoughts, my man?
No, and like Scott mentioned earlier, and I'm sure throughout the stream itself, find our special guests' descriptions all there where you can find them, because they've got some great content. With Albert's channel, and Pat's a regular with his pre and post match videos, which inspire the Chelsea community. But from our show's perspective, we are running a weekly recap of the Premier League as well as a forward-looking show on Tuesday and Thursday this week, so be on the lookout for that. And Scott and I are flying the IFT flag in conjunction with another content creator, Miz, from the other side of the coin tonight, called Down Under Football Crew, so stay tuned for that. But apart from that, it's been a really awesome discussion. It's the first time we've tried this concept of a post-match reaction, and the quality of it is bolstered by those in the live chat, so thanks very much for contributing. But Scott, as you mentioned, I think the last word of the day is left to Mr. Patrick Larson to give the Chelsea community what they want to hear.
Well, before I do that, if I could, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come on. Albert, really nice to meet you. Made a pleasure to be on with you. And just a quick word about it's a football thing. What you guys have done with starting out as a podcast, a few months back, and then you've grown it into a YouTube channel with balanced views. To see 3 guys that support 3 different football clubs who are mates to come together and create magic like you do is really just a real tribute to the both of you. And also shout out to Rob the Red Devil, obviously supports Manchester United. And I just think the fact that you are able to do this just shows that yes, we can support our clubs, but it's important to know that we have friends outside of football as well. And it's good to have banter and, to go back and forth about things. But the fact that you all have a good platform like this that you share with, bringing in people in the live chat, shout out to them. They've been amazing. And I just want to just say props to you guys for what you've built here. So.
And quickly before Pat throws out his catch cry, Albert, you got anything coming up, my man? Tell the people watching, if they don't already know, where they can find you. It's all linked, but you tell them anyway.
No, first, it's a pleasure to come on, man. Like I said, this has been way overdue, but this is always going to happen. So, no, glad to meet. It's great to meet you guys. Listen, I love Arsenal, but I've met some amazing people in other football clubs in the last 12, 14 months. It's been incredible doing YouTube. So, you guys keep doing your amazing stuff on your channel, man. You deserve the props, absolutely. And I'll try and get to Australia at some point in my, before the next Olympics you've got in Brisbane. But that's my time frame. So I'm giving it that. But guys, keep doing the amazing work. And like I said, come and check me out, Albert J TV. Don't just do Arsenal content, but I try and get a lot of other football clubs on board as well. And I'll be on somebody else's channel tomorrow night to talk about Arsenal even more. So big up Fergus, Guns and Yellow Ribbons.
Perfect. We'll definitely check that out. All right, Pat. As soon as you throw it out there, I'm ending this live stream. Thank you, everyone in the live chat. Last word to you, Pat.
For all the Chelsea supporters, come on, you Blues.